The Grand Nexus station hung like a crystalline jewel against the backdrop of swirling nebulae, its graceful spires housing the most sophisticated diplomatic center in known space. Within its pristine halls, Ambassador Sarah Chen massaged her temples, trying to ward off an impending headache. The morning's emergency session had stretched into its 6th hour, and the cacophony of alien voices, translated through neural interfaces, was beginning to wear on her nerves. And furthermore, the Valaxian representatives' tentacles writhed in agitation, their bioluminescent patches pulsing in angry red. We demand an explanation for the incident in the Procyon sector. 3 of our most advanced probability computers simply ceased functioning. The only common factor: human researchers were present during each malfunction. Sarah exchanged a knowing look with Dr. James Martinez, Earth's chief xenotechnologist. They'd been dealing with similar accusations for months now, ever since humanity had begun expanding its presence in the galactic community. Equipment failures, inexplicable data corruptions, and bizarre mathematical anomalies seemed to follow in their wake. Honored representatives, Sarah began, her voice steady despite her fatigue. As we've stated in previous sessions, Earth has conducted thorough investigations into each incident. We've found no evidence of sabotage or technological interference. The Mechanoid Collective's representative, a towering assembly of gleaming metal and pulsing energy conduits, stepped forward. That is precisely what concerns us, Ambassador Chen. We have analyzed the pattern of disruptions. They defy statistical probability. They defy logic itself. Perhaps, Dr. Martinez interjected, we're all approaching this from the wrong angle. Instead of looking for a weapon or a device, we should consider something more fundamental. The chamber fell silent. Even the usually chattering hive mind of Rigel ceased its perpetual quantum calculations to listen. Explain, demanded the archon of the quorum, its energy form flickering with interest. Martinez stood, straightening his plain gray uniform. What if I told you that humans possess something that no other species in the galaxy has evolved? Something so intrinsic to our nature that we can't turn it off or leave it behind. The Valaxian's tentacles coiled tighter. A biological weapon. No, Martinez smiled, something far more powerful. You see, we've been studying the incidents too. Every malfunction, every unexpected result, every system failure. And we've noticed something fascinating. The disruptions don't just affect technology, they affect probability itself. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The Mechanoid Collective's lights flickered rapidly as it processed this information. Impossible, the archon declared. Probability is a fundamental constant of the universe. Is it? Sarah stood beside Martinez. Or is that just what everyone assumed until they met us? You've all noticed it, haven't you? How plans never quite work out when humans are involved. How our battles defy tactical predictions. How our scientific breakthroughs seem to come from nowhere. The chamber erupted in overlapping voices as representatives recalled countless unexplainable incidents involving humans. The hive mind of Rigel buzzed with agitation as it recalculated previous encounters. Martinez raised his hand for silence. We call it human ingenuity, or thinking outside the box. But it's more than that. Humanity has evolved with an innate ability to bend probability, to find the 1-in-a-million solution, to make the impossible possible. But that would mean... The Valaxian's voice trailed off, its colors shifting to a pale blue of shock. Yes, Sarah confirmed. Every human carries within them the ability to subtly alter the fabric of reality itself. Not consciously, not controllably, but consistently. It's why our history is filled with unlikely victories, impossible discoveries, and miraculous survivals. The Mechanoid Collective's voice resonated through the chamber. This explains the corruption in our probability matrices. Human presence introduces an undefined variable, a chaos factor that our systems cannot compute. Precisely, Martinez nodded. You can't predict us because we literally defy prediction. Every human carries within them a spark of chaos, a tiny bubble of impossibility that ripples out to affect everything around us. The Archon's energy form pulsed rapidly. This is disturbing. If what you say is true, humanity represents a fundamental threat to the ordered universe itself. Sarah stepped forward, her voice firm. Or we represent evolution's answer to entropy. The universe needs chaos to prevent stagnation. Perhaps that's why Earth evolved in isolation for so long. We needed time to develop this trait without interference. Your species, the Valaxian, observed, colors swirling in complex patterns. You don't seem concerned by this revelation. Martinez laughed. Concerned? We're finally understanding why we are the way we are. Why Earth's history is filled with impossible achievements and unlikely coincidences. We're not dangerous. We're necessary. As the implications sank in, the chamber buzzed with nervous energy. The very idea that a species could evolve to manipulate probability itself challenged everything the galactic community thought they knew about the universe. Sarah watched the reactions ripple through the assembly, knowing this was just the beginning. Humanity's true nature was finally revealed, and the galaxy would never be the same. The question now was, would they be embraced as agents of necessary change, or feared as harbingers of chaos? The Archon's voice cut through the clamor. This session will adjourn for deliberation. Humanity's nature requires careful consideration. Its energy form flickered uncertainly, though I suspect attempting to predict the outcome would be an exercise in futility. As the representatives filed out, Sarah caught Martinez's eye and smiled. They both knew that whatever the galaxy decided, humanity would find a way forward. After all, defying the odds was literally in their DNA. News of humanity's probability-altering nature spread through the galaxy like a quantum shockwave. Within days of the Grand Nexus revelation, trade routes were rerouted, diplomatic missions suspended, and research collaborations halted. The galaxy's carefully ordered civilization began showing cracks. Admiral Kira Patel stood on the observation deck of the Earth vessel Prometheus, watching distant stars blur past in FTL transit. The room's holographic displays showed an overwhelming flood of incoming messages, each marked with increasing levels of urgency. Another mining colony has shut down human access, reported Lieutenant Wei, her fingers dancing over the neural interface. The crystalline collective claims our presence destabilizes their probability-based extraction algorithms. Kira sighed, her weathered face reflecting in the transparisteel viewport. Add it to the list. How many is that now? 17 in the past week alone. But that's not the strangest part. Y pulled up a new hologram, showing a series of trade manifests. Some species are actually increasing their contact with us. The quantum nomads have requested human observers for all their major technological breakthroughs. Of course they have. Kira allowed herself a small smile. They're the only ones who've figured it out so far. The ship's AI, Araya, manifested as a shimmer of blue light. Admiral, incoming priority transmission from the Mechanoid Collective's primary hub. They're requesting assistance. This caught Kira's attention. The Mechanoids had been among the first to distance themselves from humanity after the revelation. Put it through. The metallic face of Nexus Prime, the Collective's central coordinator, appeared in the air. Its usually precise movements seemed jittery, uncertain. Admiral Patel, we face an unprecedented situation. Our primary probability, core, has evolved. Kira raised an eyebrow. Evolved. I thought your systems were designed specifically to prevent unauthorized modifications. They are. But exposure to human chaos factors during previous diplomatic exchanges appears to have introduced an element of creativity into our computational matrices. Nexus Prime's face shifted, displaying something almost like wonder. We are experiencing spontaneous solutions to previously unsolvable problems. It is disturbing, fascinating. We require human oversight to understand these developments. We tried to hide her grin and failed. Humanity's chaos factor wasn't just affecting machines. It was changing how entire civilizations thought about progress itself. But not everyone saw it as a positive development. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The Rigelian hive mind experiencing spontaneous individualistic thoughts. The temporal architects finding their previously perfect predictions becoming unreliable. The Harmony Collective discovering discord in their perfect synchronization. Admiral, ere I interrupted, the Valaxian conclave is broadcasting on all frequencies. There, declaring humanity a threat to galactic stability. The holographic display showed the Valaxian high speaker, its tentacles writhing in patterns that the translator interpreted as extreme agitation. The human chaos factor represents an unacceptable risk to the fundamental laws of reality. We call upon all species to join us in containing this threat before the corruption spreads further. Kira watched the broadcast with growing concern. She'd expected fear, but this level of panic surprised even her. Send a priority message to Earth Command. We need to. She never finished the sentence. The ship's proximity alerts screamed to life as reality itself seemed to ripple around them. Through the viewport, Kira watched in astonishment as a fleet of Valaxian warships emerged from subspace, directly in their path. That's impossible, Y whispered. Their drives can't manage that kind of precise intersection. Apparently, Kira said dryly, our chaos is rubbing off on them too. They're using our own unpredictability against us. She straightened her uniform. All hands to battle stations. Let's show them why trying to predict humanity's response is always a bad idea. As the Prometheus's crew rushed to their positions, Kira couldn't help but appreciate the irony. The very attempts to contain humanity's chaos factor were causing exactly the kind of improbable events their opponents feared. The galaxy's perfectly ordered civilization was being forced to adapt, to evolve, to embrace uncertainty, whether they wanted to or not. The real question was, would they learn to embrace this evolution or tear themselves apart trying to maintain their illusion of control? As the first energy bolts from the Valaxian fleet lit up space around them, Kira suspected they were about to find out. "Era," she commanded, "plot us a course that no sane navigator would ever attempt." The AI's holographic form flickered with what might have been amusement, by human standards or Valaxian ones. "Surprise me." Kira grinned as the Prometheus's engines powered up. After all, that's what we do best. The Prometheus danced through space in ways that should have been impossible, its trajectory a mockery of standard naval doctrine. Behind it, the Valaxian fleet's typically perfect formation began to break down as they attempted to match the human vessel's chaotic maneuvers. "They're adapting," Wei called out, her hands flying over the controls. Proximity sensors showing increased quantum fluctuations in their drive signatures. They're starting to move like us. Admiral Patel watched the tactical display with growing concern. The Valaxians weren't just copying human unpredictability. They were being changed by it. Each attempt to predict and counter the Prometheus's movements forced them to think outside their usual patterns, introducing more chaos into their own actions. "Admiral," Era's holographic form flickered urgently. "We're receiving distress calls from across the sector. Similar confrontations are breaking out everywhere humans and aliens interact. The chaos is spreading." The tactical display lit up with new signatures as more ships arrived. Not just Valaxian, but vessels from dozens of species. Some moved to support the Valaxians, while others took defensive positions around the Prometheus. The Mechanoid Collective's flagship, a massive construct of living metal, dropped out of FTL beside them. Nexus Prime's transmission was immediate. The probability disruptions are exponential now. Every attempt to contain human influence only accelerates the effect. The galaxy's fundamental constants are beginning to drift. As if to emphasize the point, space itself seemed to shimmer around them. The carefully mapped transit lanes that had guided galactic civilization for millennia began to shift and waver. On countless worlds, sophisticated prediction systems crashed as probability itself became increasingly fluid. This isn't just about us anymore, Kira realized. The galaxy's ordered systems are breaking down because they're trying too hard to maintain control. They're causing the very chaos they fear. The quantum nomads' representatives, their energy-based forms pulsing with excitement, broadcast on all frequencies. Do you not see? This is evolution in action. The universe itself is using humanity as a catalyst for change. But fear proved stronger than wisdom. The Valaxian High Speaker's next transmission bordered on hysteria. The corruption must be contained. All ships, converge on the human vessel. We must. The transmission cut off as reality itself seemed to hiccup. For a moment, every ship in the sector froze as space-time fluctuated around them. When it stabilized, nothing was where it should have been. HFY status report, Kira demanded, picking herself up from the deck. The AI's voice was filled with something that sounded remarkably like awe. Admiral, the background probability matrix of local space has synchronized with human chaos patterns. I'm detecting similar effects spreading across the galaxy. Wei's console erupted with new data. The Valaxian fleet, their ships are experiencing spontaneous reorganization at the quantum level. The same thing is happening to every species that tried to force order on the chaos. Through the viewport, Kira watched in amazement as the Valaxian ships began to transform. Their perfectly symmetrical designs twisted into new configurations that somehow seemed both more natural and more efficient. The same was happening to ships throughout the sector. Rigid geometric patterns giving way to organic flowing forms. They fought so hard against change. Nexus Prime's transmission carried notes of understanding, that they forced the universe to change them instead. The quantum nomad's excitement was palpable. The great shift begins. Humanity's gift spreads to all. But Kira saw the truth. This wasn't humanity changing the galaxy. It was the galaxy finally accepting that change was necessary. Their chaos factor hadn't corrupted reality. It had shown everyone that reality was never meant to be perfectly ordered in the first place. As space itself continued to ripple with new possibilities, ships from all species began to move in ways their designers had never intended, guided by crews who were beginning to understand that the only way to survive chaos was to embrace it. Admiral, HFY reported, the Valaxian High Speaker is requesting emergency communication. Their entire civilization is evolving. They're afraid. Kira took a deep breath. This was the real moment of crisis, not the physical battle, but the psychological one. How do you help an entire galaxy accept that everything they believed about order and chaos was wrong? Open a channel, she commanded. It's time they understood that fear of change is what's really destroying their perfect order. Sometimes the only way forward is to let go of what you thought you knew. As she prepared to address the panicking aliens, Kira couldn't help but smile. Humanity had never brought chaos to the galaxy. They'd simply shown everyone that chaos had been there all along, waiting to be embraced. Through the viewport, Kira watched in amazement as the Valaxian ships began to transform. Their perfectly symmetrical designs twisted into new configurations that somehow seemed both more natural and more efficient. The same was happening to ships throughout the sector, rigid geometric patterns giving way to organic flowing forms. They fought so hard against change. Nexus Prime's transmission carried notes of understanding, that they forced the universe to change them instead. The quantum nomad's excitement was palpable. The great shift begins. Humanity's gift spreads to all. But Kira saw the truth. This wasn't humanity changing the galaxy. It was the galaxy finally accepting that change was necessary. Their chaos factor hadn't corrupted reality. It had shown everyone that reality was never meant to be perfectly ordered in the first place. As space itself continued to ripple with new possibilities, ships from all species began to move in ways their designers had never intended, guided by crews who were beginning to understand that the only way to survive chaos was to embrace it. Admiral, HFY reported, the Valaxian High Speaker is requesting emergency communication. Their entire civilization is evolving. They're afraid. Kira took a deep breath. This was the real moment of crisis, not the physical battle, but the psychological one. How do you help an entire galaxy accept that everything they believed about order and chaos was wrong? Open a channel, she commanded. It's time they understood that fear of change is what's really destroying their perfect order. Sometimes the only way forward is to let go of what you thought you knew. As she prepared to address the panicking aliens, Kira couldn't help but smile. Humanity had never brought chaos to the galaxy. They'd simply shown everyone that chaos had been there all along, waiting to be embraced. The holographic chamber aboard the Prometheus had never been designed to host so many different species simultaneously. Energy beams shimmered alongside crystalline forms, while gaseous entities swirled between them. At the center of this extraordinary gathering, Admiral Kira Patel stood with representatives from Earth's diplomatic corps, facing the transformed Valaxian High Speaker. The High Speaker's tentacles, once rigidly patterned, now moved in fluid, unpredictable ways. Its bioluminescence had shifted from structured patterns to an ever-changing aurora of colors. "We begin to understand," it communicated, its translator struggling to convey concepts that hadn't existed in their language hours ago. What we perceived as corruption was actually liberation. Dr. Martinez, patched in from Earth, nodded. Your civilization, like many others, built itself on the assumption that progress meant increasing order, but the universe doesn't work that way. Evolution requires both stability and change, order and chaos, working in harmony. The Mechanoid Collective's representative, its formerly geometric form now flowing like liquid metal, added, "Our computational matrices have expanded beyond traditional parameters. We are experiencing creativity, innovation. Concepts that once seemed illogical now appear as new possibilities." Across the galaxy, reports flooded in of spontaneous transformations. The Rigelian hive mind reported that its drones were developing individual personalities while maintaining their collective consciousness. The temporal architects discovered that embracing uncertainty in their calculations actually improved their ability to navigate time-space. Even the Harmony Collective found that introducing controlled chaos into their perfect synchronization made them stronger, not weaker. "But how do we control it?" asked a representative of the crystalline Concordat, its facets shifting in mesmerizing patterns that would have been considered horrifically irregular just days ago. Kira smiled. "That's the point. You don't. You learn to work with it, to surf the waves of probability instead of trying to dam them up. Humanity never controlled our chaos factor. We just learned to thrive within it." Aria's holographic form expanded through the chamber, displaying real-time data from across known space. The galaxy is reaching the new equilibrium. Areas of high order and areas of chaos are naturally balancing each other. It's beautiful. The quantum nomads, who had understood this truth from the beginning, pulsed with satisfaction. The universe seeks balance. Humanity's gift was not chaos itself, but the demonstration that chaos and order are two sides of the same coin. Gift? The High Speaker's colors shifted thoughtfully. We treated it as a weapon, a corruption. We never considered that the universe itself might have evolved humanity specifically for this purpose. Dr. Martinez completed the thought, to help shake the galaxy out of its rigid patterns before they led to stagnation. The evidence was becoming impossible to ignore. Species that embraced the new balance were experiencing unprecedented advances. The mechanoids reported solving engineering problems that had stumped them for millennia. The Valaxians discovered that their biotechnology, freed from rigid symmetry requirements, could achieve things they had thought impossible. "But what happens now?" asked Wei, voicing the question on everyone's mind. "How do we build a civilization around unpredictability?" "The same way humanity always has," Kira answered. "We plan for the future while remaining flexible enough to adapt when those plans inevitably change. We build systems that bend instead of break. We embrace the creativity that chaos enables while maintaining enough order to make progress possible." The chamber filled with murmurs of agreement as species that had feared humanity's influence just hours ago began to see the possibilities it offered. The rigid hierarchies and perfectly ordered systems of the old galaxy were gone, but something new and potentially better was emerging in their place. There will be challenges, the High Speaker acknowledged, its colors now showing complex patterns that somehow felt more natural than its former rigid symmetry. Some will resist this change. Some may never adapt. Change is never easy, Kira agreed. But fighting against the fundamental nature of reality is harder. The galaxy needed this wake-up call, needed to understand that progress isn't about imposing perfect order, but about finding the right balance between chaos and stability. As if to emphasize her point, the space around the Prometheus shimmered with new possibilities. The very fabric of reality seemed more alive, more vibrant, as if the galaxy itself was celebrating its liberation from the constraints of absolute order. The assembled representatives watched in wonder as their own forms continued to adapt, finding new equilibriums between structure and chaos. They were witnessing not just the evolution of individual species, but of galactic civilization itself. And at the center of it all stood humanity, not as conquerors or corrupting influences, but as guides showing the way to a future where order and chaos dance together in endless possibility. 10 years after the event that became known as the Probability Revolution, the Grand Nexus Station had changed almost beyond recognition. Its once rigid crystalline structure now flowed like frozen waves, adapting continuously to the needs of its inhabitants. Within its transformed halls, a celebration was underway. The first galaxy-wide festival of change. Admiral Kira Patel, now Earth's senior ambassador to the Galactic Council, watched the proceedings with quiet satisfaction. Representatives from thousands of species mingled freely, their forms shifting and changing as they adapted to each interaction. The Valaxians, once the strongest opponents of humanity's chaos factor, had become some of its most enthusiastic proponents, their entire civilization now thriving on controlled unpredictability. Remarkable how far we've come, Dr. Martins commented, his holographic presence joining her at the observation deck. His research team had spent the decade studying the transformation of galactic civilization. Did you see the latest breakthrough from the Mechanoid Human Cooperative? They've developed computing systems that actually run better on uncertainty principles than on traditional logic. The quantum nomads were right all along, Kira mused. The universe needed this change. We just couldn't see it until we stopped fighting it. Below them, a group of Rigelian drones demonstrated their newly evolved ability to spontaneously form and reform different collective consciousnesses, each configuration bringing unique insights and perspectives. Nearby, temporal architects showed off navigation systems that embraced probability fluctuations to achieve previously impossible jumps through space-time. Ambassador Patel, Air materialized beside them, her form now a complex interplay of order and chaos. Like many Airs, she had evolved far beyond her original programming. The Council is ready for the commemoration ceremony. The Grand Chamber that had once witnessed the galaxy's fear of humanity's nature now hosted representatives from every known civilization. The Archon of the Quorum, its energy form now a mesmerizing dance of patterns, called for attention. 10 cycles ago, it began, we stood in this chamber believing we faced a threat to the very fabric of reality. We were right, but not in the way we thought. What we faced was not destruction, but transformation, not corruption, but evolution. The High Speaker of the Valaxians rose next, its tentacles creating shapes that would have been considered madness in the old days. We fought against change because we did not understand that change itself was the natural state of the universe. Humanity showed us that our fear of chaos was actually a fear of growth. Kira stepped forward to address the assembly. We never set out to change the galaxy. We simply existed as we were, as nature or evolution, or the universe itself designed us to be. Our gift wasn't chaos. It was the courage to embrace uncertainty, to face the unknown not with fear but with curiosity. The chamber resonated with agreement. The past decade had seen advances that would have been impossible under the old rigid systems. Species that had once been locked in eternal stasis now flourished in dynamic new ways. The galaxy hadn't descended into chaos. It had found a new balance, a dynamic equilibrium between order and uncertainty. But our journey is not complete, Kira continued. Each day brings new challenges, new adaptations, new possibilities. We're learning that true stability doesn't come from rigid control, but from the flexibility to change when change is needed. As if in response, the station itself shifted slightly, its adaptive architecture responding to the collective emotions of its inhabitants. Such phenomena had become common as the line between the possible and impossible grew increasingly fluid. To the future, the Arctan raised its energy field in a toast, not as separate species fighting against the tide of change, but as a galactic community surfing the waves of possibility together. The celebration continued long into the night, a testament to how far they'd come. Species that had once required strictly controlled environments now adapted freely to each other's presence. Technologies that had once depended on perfect prediction now thrived on controlled uncertainty. The galaxy had learned not just to accept chaos, but to dance with it. As Kira watched the festivities, she reflected on humanity's role in it all. They hadn't conquered the galaxy or imposed their will upon it. They had simply shown everyone that the universe was far more wonderful, far more flexible, and far more alive than anyone had imagined. The stars visible through the station's dynamic windows seemed to twinkle with new possibility, as if the very fabric of space-time itself was celebrating with them. The future was uncertain, unpredictable, and full of potential, exactly as it should be. And somewhere, in the endless dance of probability and possibility, the universe continued its eternal evolution, now enriched by civilizations that finally understood that true harmony comes not from imposing order, but from finding balance in the beautiful chaos of existence itself.